Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming back to our bird identification classes. My name is Linda, and I'm naturalist with Lorain County Metro Parks. This week's session is called Birds and Berries. So we're going to be talking about some of the birds and the natural food that they use from out in nature. So we are here at Sheffley Garden. It's a wonderful, beautiful place. If you have not been here before, make sure that you come out and visit it. It makes it a great birding place here because it is bordered by the Vermilion River Valley, has a lot of tall trees, and has a lot of edges from the gardens, and then of course the plants within the different gardens itself makes a great food source for these birds. So you will get a lot of different variety here that you can see, especially in the springtime migration. So when we talk about birds and winter food, a lot of people feed birds in the wintertime, and that certainly helps them find their grocery store. But the truth is that many birds will find food sources away from your bird feeder. Nature has provided a lot of different types of food for them to survive these cold winters and some of those big snowstorms and blizzards that we are all familiar with here in the Cleveland area. So during the wintertime, some birds will actually change the things that they eat. So their diet changes from season to season. Many of you are familiar with the cardinals and robins, and they eat other animals during the nesting season. Cardinals love those juicy insects, and robins will hunt for the juicy worms. However, those are not readily available at this time of year, so they actually eat other things. So cardinals will change their diet and feed mostly upon birdseed as well as berries. So we're going to talk a little bit about first some of these fruit-eating birds, and then when we will go outside, we will talk about seeds and berries that they can find here on the grounds of Sheffley Garden. So we're going to start out with some of the familiar birds. So the little woodpecker, you will know that they will feed upon many of the grubs underneath the bark of trees in wintertime. But they will also utilize the food off of the sumac there. And then here is an example of the red-bellied woodpecker utilizing oranges. So another bird that we're familiar with, of course, is the robin. And you can see here it is eating berries. And then another bird that we see mostly in the summertime is the catbird, and he is eating a blackberry. He's actually feeding the young the blackberries, which I found very interesting. I thought they mostly fed their young insects. Robins will also peck at things like apples, the soft fruit of the apples, especially in late winter. So that's kind of interesting. So birds will eat the fruits and berries, and they will eat the tastier ones first, such as from the dogwood trees and poison ivy berries. So then the ones later in the winter are kind of the ones that maybe are not as tasty or nutritious to them. In fact, in springtime, we often get phone calls about robins and other birds flying crazy like they are under the influence, and in reality they are, because by the time they eat a lot of these soft, fleshy fruits, they have kind of fermented. So they actually are a little impaired when they try to fly. So yes, birds can get a little bit drunk off of the fruits that are around. So some other birds that will utilize fruits. You've got your bluebird here. This is the immature one. And here's another one here. And then you see this cluster of bluebirds. They're actually feeding upon mealbugs or mealworms within the feeder. So that's another source of food that you can provide for them at the feeder. So those are some of the common birds that you are familiar with that will eat some of the fruits. So there's also seeds and nuts, such as walnuts, beech nuts. Okay, so there's a lot of those other trees that provide a food source in the form of nuts. So some of the other birds that you might see periodically during the wintertime are considered nomadic birds. Now think about what that word nomad means. It means kind of wandering about, usually with numbers of other individuals, and they're searching for food or other things that they need to survive. So there are several nomadic type of birds that we will see here. One of the common, more nomadic type of birds is the cedar waxwing. They do nest around here, but in the wintertime, they seem to congregate in small flocks and will fly around to search for their food source. And they do like to eat a lot of berries. So if you happen to see them in the wintertime, that's a great sighting. Another type of nomadic bird is the evening grosbeak. Now we may get a chance to see them once or twice during the wintertime. I've seen them in flocks of about 50 to 60, or as small as about a dozen. But they are really, really cool, beautiful birds. So the male here, he kind of has those big yellow eyebrows. And then when you compare it to the female there, she is beautiful, but certainly not as colorful as the male. These guys will eat berries, but they will also eat seeds too. So you can see their big beak made for crushing. They love to eat maple seeds. That's one of their delicacies that they prefer. So not only will they eat natural food, but sometimes you might be rewarded with a site like this at one of your feeders. So they will also come to feeders, so you will see them around housing developments as well. Another type of bird that can be somewhat nomadic then is also bluebirds. They like to go in groups and hang out with each other. And there have been reports of at least 15 bluebirds in a hollow in a tree, so that would have been some sight to see. Some other birds that like to kind of hang out or congregate together are chickadees and titmice. So up in the treetops, you might see a lot of little birds flitting around up there. They usually travel together, the chickadees and then the little tufted titmouse, the gray bird with the little crest. So another thing too that Sheffley Garden offers here is evergreen trees and holly trees. So those offer protection for the birds. They also provide a food source. The pine cones, there are certain birds that will eat pine cones. One of them, although not very commonly seen around here, not very often, maybe only if the weather up north is very bad, is the crossbill. But I just thought I would point it out because you can see how its beak is crossed, but it's detrimental in his approach to feeding out of the pine cones and obtaining the seeds. So it's a pretty cool bird. And you can see it's on the evergreen trees. So to check out any of these unusual birds, you can look and Google rare birds in Ohio and things like that, so you can kind of maybe have the opportunity to go see them. I had pointed out the catbird before. A cousin of the catbird is the brown thrasher, and these guys will sometimes eat seeds as well. So you can see he has a speckled breast and kind of a downward curved beak and an upright tail. And that's actually kind of the same position a catbird typically will land in. You can see kind of that upright tail. So another group of birds that will sometimes eat fruit, I pointed out the robin and the bluebirds. Those guys actually are members of the thrush family. And here are two more species of the thrush family. We have the wood thrush here, okay, and then the little bit smaller of the hermit thrush. And his tail, it's very difficult to see, but he has kind of a reddish tail in compared to the rest of his body. So you see that all of these members of the thrush family have spots on them. Now, an adult robin does not have the spots, and neither does an adult bluebird, but the babies do have the spotting on them. Let's see, and I don't have a picture of that, but on the young bluebird here, you can see that it is a different coloration than the adult. So when you have a chance, maybe check around some of your trees that have fruit on them, and maybe you'll be rewarded with a unique find, or come on out to Sheffley Garden and take a walk around the gardens and keep your eye and ear out for some of these birds. We will be going outside and talking about some of the seeds and the trees that provide more food for the birds. Thank you.